As always, nothing you hear on the Stripped Pod should be a substitute for personalised professional medical advice. Please always consult your clinician or other medical professional before making any changes to your diet, dosages, or healthcare plan.
Hello and welcome to the Stripped Pod, your weekly diabetes fix, where we strip back the stigma for real, honest conversations about diabetes beyond the numbers.
I'm Ash, a passionate diabetes advocate and founder of Strip Supply.
And I'm Braden, co-host Without a Working Pancreas.
Coming up on today's pod, I sit down with Joe Sater, country manager of Insulet, chatting all things Omnipod 5 and running a diabetes health tech business. But first, Braden, welcome back.
Thank you. It's nice to be back.
I bet. Tell me about the highs and the lows of your week.
Well, I mean, the high is obviously that we survived the cyclone.
Yep, that's a big hype.
that was pretty great. That was pretty hectic. It was, I'm not going to lie, it was pretty nuts. It was something very surreal to experience and very strange. Where I live, we didn't lose power or we weren't affected by any of the flooding. So we were super lucky. A lot of the southeast Queensland lost power. I think there was over 300,000 people affected by power outages in southeast Queensland and northern New South Wales. So we were super lucky. Sort of everyone around us lost power, like all the suburbs around and then down the coast, but us being a little bit closer to the city, we kept our power running, and we were super lucky to not have any damage or anything like that. So look, it all ended well. It was a very strange experience, and the week leading into it was just absolutely chaos. There was nothing you could buy at the shops. It was like COVID again.
I saw this. Just shelves completely empty.
Yeah, it was just panic buying. And, I don't understand why, people are buying 15 packets of toilet paper. Like, what are you going to do with that? You're going to throw toilet paper at the floodwater if it starts rising or something?
They really, like their greatest fear is running out of toilet paper.
Yeah.
I mean, relatable.
I mean, yeah, but you're not going to use it any more than you would normally.
Yeah,
so I don't know why we have to, go in there and absolutely destroy the shelves. But yeah, we were very lucky and we came out of it the other side and, the sun's shining again. It's beautiful back up here in Brisbane now. You wouldn't even know that we went through it. So, obviously a lot of places were affected by power and flooding. So hopefully everyone out there is doing okay and got through pretty scot-free. Didn't have to waste too much insulin or anything like that. So that was definitely the high of my week, I think. I also just had a really nice weekend, to be honest with you. I had a 30th on Saturday and I had my brother's birthday on Sunday. So I just spent time with all of my friends and my close mates on Saturday and then with my family on Sunday, which was really nice. So yeah, feeling really good. Now just get stuck into a busy week. And then I head down to Sydney this weekend.
What?
Yeah, I'm down in Sydney this weekend.
Oh, okay. Don't bother telling me.
I'll be there.
I don't want to see you either.
No, that's fine. We'll just, we'll just wave to each other.
Yeah, are you coming, let me guess, you're coming down to see some kind of music band performance?
Correct.
Yeah.
I am. Yep. Got a concert on Sunday night. So.
Oh, fun.
Just a quick trip in and out. But yeah, that'll be nice. The lows of my week. Look, I'll be completely honest with you. I think the only low that I can really think of is the fact that I still don't get 7 days out of my sensors. But
no,
that continues to be an ongoing issue. And I honestly, I think it's just because I am so active. And like I go to the gym, right? So I'm using my arms and moving my arms a lot, especially the triceps where they're sort of sitting, and beach volleyball as well. So there's obviously a lot of arm movement in beach volleyball. So I think those are probably the main issues. I have started to complete the Medtronic form online when your sensor plays up, but I'm not too sure how many times I'm going to be able to just keep doing it one off, because you can only get one. So they keep sending me just one sensor in a giant box. But yeah, that continues to be an ongoing thing. But look, apart from that, can't complain. Actually, I'd love to hear from everyone else who runs the Medtronic Guardian Force sensor as well. If they does anyone get 7 days out of them, or do they all get the change sensor alarm before 7 days? I'd love to hear from people as to how they all go.
Tell me, how many days on average do you reckon you're getting out of a sensor being on?
It's not because it stays on. I just get a change sensor alarm.
Oh.
Yeah. So it stays on. I just think it might be because there's too much movement on my arm.
right? And it's maybe the actual needle, the cannula is actually maybe coming out.
Yeah, so it's potentially moving in my arm, and apparently they don't like to move, is what I've heard. So
They don't like to move and groove.
not great for someone who's pretty active.
Yeah.
So I'm not too sure how to get around that. I've thought about different spots on my body, but I'm also just not sure I want to be sticking it on my butt or on my thigh. I
could
just
run
feel
into
like,
a whole different stream of problems with
yeah,
those areas.
yeah. I feel like if it's on, on the backside or on the thigh, I'll just be laying on it, and it's just going to be super uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really know what to do next just yet. Watch this space. We'll see how this one goes. But
Yeah.
I've probably, I reckon I've been getting maybe 3 to 4 days wear out of them. So,
Mm.
and I don't think I've had one last me 7 days all year. So I've probably
Which-
wasted a good 20, I reckon.
Well, the biggest problem is going to be the NDSS CGM allocation is super strict. So if you're only getting half of the wear out of a sensor,
Yep.
you're going to run into problems 6 months down the line when
Yep.
NDSS is like, sorry, you've used up your CGM allocation for the year.
That actually happened to me last time I went to the chemist, and
Oh,
I
did it?
asked if I could get 2 boxes, and they said I could only get 1 because of my allocation.
Mm.
So, yeah, talk about a rock and a hard place. We'll see.
Yeah, but that reminds me, and we both actually forgot about this, but we're starting a very exciting new mini series where you're going to try out a whole bunch of different CGM patches.
I am, and I'm actually really pumped for this.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool. So you've
Yeah.
been talking about, your sets don't, you've been having this kind of a problem for ages, and you've never used a patch before, right?
No.
Over your, yeah.
No.
But there are so many awesome brands that
Yeah.
sell patches. Some of them are on the Strip Supply store. We've also reached out to some people who aren't on the Strip Supply store, and I've sent you a whole bunch of different brands. Honestly, probably like years worth of patches has been sent down to you, and you're going to trial them and come back to the pod each week and tell us what you think.
Yeah, I'm actually so keen for that.
Mm.
And years worth of, I think I said this to you in Messenger, but a year's worth of patches that might only last half a year, depending on how long my sensors actually last.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, that's really fun. I'm really looking forward to that. Getting to work with all the different brands, and we'll do some reviews. It should be good fun.
Should be good fun. So that
Yeah.
package is on its way to you right now at the moment. It should hopefully get to you by tomorrow or Wednesday.
Unreal.
And then super keen to hear what you think next week, your first impressions.
Yeah. Next week I'll fill everyone in next week.
Yeah.
We'll see how we go. We'll start from there and make our way through the brands. How fun.
So fun.
What's your high and low? How's your week been? What's happening
Oh.
down there? Sorry, I didn't
I
even
know.
ask you.
It's
we just went on a tangent.
okay. I'm not here. I don't exist. I mean, to your credit, I actually have no idea what to say about my week. It's been fine.
That's probably a good thing, right? No
yeah,
news is
it's
good
a-
news sometimes.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I mean, I
Yeah.
was kind of supposed to be on holiday this week. I'd booked a holiday at Burleigh Beach, and
That's
I
right.
booked at the start of the year, but then
Yeah.
obviously the beaches are maybe not the nicest at the moment, so I cancelled it a couple of weeks ago when the cyclone fully hit.
Mm.
And I kind of saw the sand, what was happening with the sand on the
Mm.
beaches and the huge kind of sand cliffs. So I thought maybe I'll save that for another time.
Yeah.
And also now I've seen footage at like Talabudra of sharks coming in a lot
Yeah.
closer than usual. So
Yep.
glad I cancelled that one. But
Yep.
I have resolved all my tech issues. You probably missed all this, but this is my third laptop this week.
Really?
Yeah, because they just stopped working.
Oh,
And
wow.
then I went to the Apple store and I got a new one, which was awesome. But then in 24 hours, I had to take it back because it wouldn't charge. Anyway,
Oh.
everyone at the Apple store knows me by name now. But I do have a beautiful new laptop, and I've solved all my internet problems I was having. And yeah, honestly, like nothing to write home to mum about.
Nah, look, I mean, there's still big issues.
Oh, they're
still-
big
still a
issues.
lot. It's just
They're
annoying too, right?
They're big issues. Not having
It's
a
just
laptop or internet are big issues when you are solely running a business.
Yeah.
And are responsible for 600 people around Australia needing medical supplies.
Yeah.
But we're all over it now. Back to full guns blazing. And
Right.
Strip Supply celebrated our 3rd birthday last week,
Hey, happy
and I made
birthday.
cupcakes. Thank you very much. I
Yum.
appreciate it. Don't I look young?
Were they sugar-free? Do you? Doing well for 3.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so mature for my age. They were red velvet cupcakes.
Yum. They're sugar-free?
Well, no, I did bring them. I brought them into the pharmacy today because I knew I wasn't going to eat them all. And one of the ladies I work with was like, hold on a second. You're celebrating your diabetes business birthday with cupcakes? And I said, yeah, don't read too much into it.
No. Look, It's the lifelong conversation that we all have about being able to eat sugar, isn't it? So
Exactly. You could
Yeah.
totally eat a red velvet cupcake if you wanted to.
I could eat 2 or 3 or 4.
Exactly. I just was more fixed on what is the most on-brand kind of cake that I could make.
Red, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nicely
You get me.
done. Yeah,
Picking
well
up what I'm
done.
putting down.
Good
Thanks.
stuff.
Yeah.
So that's it. Nothing else.
Nah, nothing to
No.
report.
Well, that's good. No cyclones.
No cyclones. It was
Right.
38 over the weekend though, both
Gee,
days.
that's warm. Wow.
Yeah, it was quite warm. I also had the bright idea because I don't know if you've picked up on this, but I'm a bit stubborn.
Really?
Yeah, I know. I know I don't come across that way at all. But when I get an idea in my head, I have to do it. So I decided at the beginning of last week that I wanted to walk around Sydney Harbour on the weekend. And then it came out that it was going to be 38 both days. And I thought, well, I've decided I would like to walk around Sydney Harbour. So I walked around Sydney Harbour for 2.5 hours in 38-degree heat, and it was very warm. But I didn't get sunburnt, so that was my high.
Well done. Good
Thank
stuff.
you very much. Thank you.
Nice. Proud of you.
That is all. So, Braden, after the very misguided conversation about diabetes that happened on MAFS earlier this month,
Yes.
thought
Yeah.
maybe you could lead us in this next segment all about things people with diabetes want non-diabetics to know.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, hear me out, folks, because here we go. Here are things that diabetics want non-diabetics to know. Yes, I can eat sugar. In fact, I can eat whatever I want. I think that ties in perfectly with your red velvet
Including
cupcake conversation.
Red velvet cupcakes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I can eat 15 red velvet cupcakes. I probably wouldn't, but you could if you want. Being diagnosed with diabetes is a traumatic, life-changing event. It's not just an inconvenience or a lifestyle adjustment.
You hear that, Veronica?
So we preach that one.
Yeah, we preach that one.
I don't look like I have diabetes because diabetes is almost entirely invisible.
It sure is,
Yeah.
including the 180 extra decisions you have to make every day.
Yeah, that's a lot of decisions, isn't it?
It's a lot of decision.
If I say I'm high or low, I'm talking about my blood sugar, not just my lifestyle choices.
Sure? Are you
Yep.
sure?
No, I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
My pump and my CGM are medical devices, not pages or iPods.
Yeah.
I get pages all the time. Like,
Do you really?
yeah. I think it's more of a running joke thing now. It's like, oh, you got your pager out? Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Please stop gasping when I take an injection. I promise it hurts you more than it hurts me.
Ooh.
But also, I want to gasp myself. So if you could not gasp so I can gasp, that would
That's
be nice.
true. This is already like hard enough. Let's not increase the drama.
Yes, my blood sugar affects my moods. And no, that doesn't mean I'm just hangry all the time.
And this is something I think not a lot of people know is the brain is the one organ that can't function without perfect blood sugar levels,
Yeah.
which is why it affects your mood so much.
Yeah. The mood and like attention span and everything
All
like
that fun
that.
stuff. Confusion, the confuzzlement. Yep.
Yep. And of course, diabetes is about way more than just injecting insulin.
So much more.
There's the 180 extra decisions that we were just talking about.
There's the mental
Every single
burden.
day.
Never getting a day off.
Every day. Actually, you know what? The other day, I think I'd had one of those days where just like nothing was going right. And then it was like 10 p.m. maybe or 9:30. And my insulin pump started vibrating. It was like change sensor not working. And I actually ripped it off my arm and I just threw it.
Oh,
I just threw it.
you're like,
I'd
I
had
can't.
enough. Yeah, I had had enough. And then after like 5 minutes of just like focusing on some breathing, I went and picked it up and charged it. And then it just raw dogged it for like half the next day. But
You got to do it sometimes though.
I
You
just had
can
enough.
only take so much.
Yeah, I'd had
Mm.
enough. And I just sent it. I just threw it.
Fair.
It hit the
But-
blinds and then just fell on the floor. And I was like, well, whatever.
But did you feel better throwing
I
it
did.
though?
I actually did,
well,
yeah.
I'd call that a win. Let's call that a W.
I did. And then I was like, I probably shouldn't have done that. But I did.
Ah, well.
Anyway.
Let's dive into today's episode. Today, we're joined by Country Manager of Insulet, Joe Sader, who is leading the growth of Omnipod in Australia. Joe, neither one of us has diabetes, but we're two women who have found ourselves in diabetes businesses. I reckon let's start at the beginning. Tell me a bit about your journey. What led you to join Omnipod and how did you find yourself here?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, by the way. I was consulting for Insulet when they were exploring whether or not they wanted to come into the Australian market. And at that time, there was no access pathway for the Omnipod, so it wasn't a very obvious place to enter. I received a phone call from a random mum who somehow got my phone number, and she said, "Is it true that Omnipod may be coming to Australia?" And I said, "Well, I'm not too sure. It may be, but like, how did you get my phone number? And tell me a little bit about yourself." And she said to me, "Well, my son was on a tubed insulin pump and he was not doing very well at all." She said, "I found out about the Omnipod through some research." She said, "We're not a very wealthy family, but he was in a really, really dark place. I told my husband we need to do something because he was not well at all. We took him to America. We found an endocrinologist. We got him 3 months worth of supplies and our lives changed," she said. She said, "We got our little boy back because we really thought we might lose him." And she said, "I got your phone number from the CEO of JDRF at the time, and I just rang because he said he knew that you were doing this work. And I just wanted to say, I don't know what you need to do to bring the Omnipod to Australia, but you really need to bring it to Australia." And I share that because that really was my why as to how I very much got involved with Insulet Corporation and made a decision to enter into the Australian market. And then, got on the journey of rallying the community to get an access pathway to the Omnipod. And here we are 4 years later, just about to launch the Omnipod 5, the very, very highly anticipated Omnipod 5, and could not be prouder.
Yeah, and I was telling you just before we started recording, if my email inbox is anything to go by, the community is so, so excited for Omnipod 5. And Braden and I have chatted about, new tech that's coming this year. And what we're so excited about with the Omnipod 5 is just the choice that you're giving people. You can really mix and match the pump with different CGMs, and it can work for so many people's different needs. And that's all we want, is we just want to give people choice.
100%. And that's very much our motto at Omnipod. It's giving people a choice of technology, choice also of an access pathway as well. And that's something that's really important to people, especially in Australia, because we don't have universal access, which is a real passion of mine, and something that I really want to see along with the community, some policy change so that all insulin pumps can be a choice for anyone who needs them, as opposed to those who can only afford them. So we're super, super excited that the Omnipod 5 is an additional choice for Australian consumers.
Yes, and we're so excited. It's launched this week. It's now on the NDSS.
It's on the NDSS.
Oh, how exciting.
It's also available through private health insurance, just like other insulin pumps as well. But what we find that most people really, really like is the no lock-in pay-as-you-go. So that means that people can try it, see if it's for them, and if they like it, they can continue with a no commitment subscription. And if they do have private health insurance, they can also use that as well.
Which is it's so excellent to be able to offer this kind of accessibility, because I have trouble committing to a pair of jeans, let alone a $5,000 insulin pump that I'm going to need to use for 4 years. Tell me more about the Omnipod 5. Can you break down how it works in a simple way for those who maybe haven't heard of Omnipod before?
Sure. So the Omnipod is Australia's first tubeless, waterproof, automated insulin delivery system. So what that means is the Omnipod is pretty much composed of 3 components. So you have a pod, and the pod is worn on the body anywhere where you would deliver insulin. It's filled with rapid-acting insulin. There's also 2 other components. There's a controller, and what that essentially is a lockdown smartphone. And then there's a CGM, and the CGM talks to the pod. And as we go into launch, there are 3 choices of CGMs that are TGA approved. You have the Dexcom G6, the Dexcom G7, and very shortly after launch, we will also have the Abbott Freestyle Libre 2 Plus. And so all of those are a choice for the consumer to pick from. And how the Omnipod 5 works is essentially the CGM is providing a reading to the pod every 5 minutes. There is an algorithm, and that's called the Smart Adjust, and that is actually located on the pod. The algorithm will work with the CGM current value as well as looking out 60 minutes. And based on all of that information, it will either increase, decrease, or pause insulin delivery based on what that information is doing. And it is doing that every 5 minutes to keep people in a safe range.
Mm-hmm. And it just takes one less thing off someone's mind, doesn't it? If someone is heading out of range, you've got the pod doing a little bit of extra legwork to help keep you in range, even until, you've got time to check your levels yourself and make an adjustment. So I'm interested in hearing about, how automated is the Omnipod 5? How much input does a person need to give?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So all automated insulin delivery insulin pumps in Australia are hybrid, which means that the user still needs to provide input into the insulin pump. And so the Omnipod 5, people still do need to give themselves a bolus through the bolus calculator, but there is a functionality which actually helps do those calculations in terms of how much insulin is required.
That's great, because I know, maths in your head on the go when you're sitting in front of a big, delicious plate of food. Having a little help with that is also great.
Yes. And there's an additional feature actually that people really love, and it's a custom food diary. And so it just means that you can save some of your favorite foods, and it's just so much easier to input that into the insulin pump. Yeah.
And obviously, like we were saying, the community is so excited for the launch of the Omnipod 5. Even we are in the studio. You came in wearing an Omnipod 5 temporary tattoo, and I said, "Where is mine? Where can I get one?" And you really delivered. This is such an exciting development. And again, just the new tech that we're seeing this year is really putting Australia on the map of diabetes healthcare with a patient front of mind. What makes the Omnipod 5 launch such a big deal for the diabetes community?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things. People love choices. Diabetes is a self-managed condition. And so, there's a misconception that you can just treat everyone the same and, everything will be fine. But people really do need to have a choice of the right insulin delivery system for them, the right CGM, the right algorithm to best manage their condition. Tubeless is the number one reason why people pick the Omnipod. We've asked every single person who's ever gone on an Omnipod in Australia. And, that desire is also backed up by clinical evidence that we've seen. In fact, a study that was done here in Australia showed that people do have a preference for a pod over both multiple daily injections as well as a tube pump. Gives much better quality of life. And that's really important to a user because this is a technology that they wear every single day. They have to do life. They have to have showers, swim, exercise, do all the myriad of things that a busy person does. And really the goal is to remove diabetes and put it in the background so that people can get on doing what they do, right? Because life is busy and people don't want to be fiddling with tubes and cables and things that are getting in the way. And so in being tubeless and having that automation, with a CGM of choice, that is what has made it just so popular and what we've seen around the world. And it's certainly been no different here. I mean, we have really been inundated with demand and people wanting to know more and know how they can get onto it. So, yeah.
Well, we are a country surrounded by water, and we do live in the water in Australia. We are spending either half of the year in the water or sweating our butts off. Being able to have something that is waterproof, is it water resistant or
waterproof.
It is waterproof? Yeah, it's a huge deal. It's one less thing to think about, absolutely. And so obviously the tubing is what sets it apart from other pumps. And I love giving people more choice, which is exactly why strip supply exists as well. If you don't want to go into the pharmacy, you have another choice. What else makes Omnipod so special in your eyes?
I really think there's the data management around the Omnipod is really what makes it quite unique. So we've now got, several 100,000 users around the world who are using the Omnipod 5. Traditionally, on previous or tubed insulin pumps, there's a requirement for a person to actually upload their insulin pump. Okay.
That's right.
With the Omnipod 5, it's actually all automated. So the user doesn't have to do anything. That data goes up to the cloud every 5 minutes and it's collected. What's really important, we're not seeing biased data of people who, have a certain level of health literacy or engagement in their diabetes. It's everyone, where we get to see how they're using the device and all these insights which really drive the development of the product.
Yeah.
But give us insight into how they're doing in a aggregated, de-identified way. And I think that's really, really insightful in terms of what we've seen so far. The real world data shows people's preferences in terms of the settings that they set. And that really drives us to, I guess, iterate the technology in future generations.
Yeah, 100%. Because my assumption would be, if I am going the extra mile to upload my pump data so that my diabetes educator can see it, I'm probably quite proud of that data and happy for someone to see it. But I might just, forget to upload my data in advance of my appointment if maybe I wasn't so proud of that data.
That is right.
Or I thought that maybe I was going to be judged in my appointment or, dragged over the coals. But all data is important, like you said, to understand, okay, Australia-wide, what is the health like of people with diabetes right now? What are they doing? Where are they struggling? Where are the biggest challenges? Because once you know those challenges, you can
solve for them.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm just going to go back really quickly to something else you said about the Omnipod, because we know, and correct me if I'm wrong, using an insulin pump or some kind of automated insulin delivery piece of tech, that improves time and range. Like that, we've done research studies to prove that improves time and range. Is that right?
Correct. So, across the literature, we do see that there is an improvement for people who use an automated insulin delivery system. And the data shows, those what we call glycemic metrics, time in range, HbA1c, time in hyperglycemia. And in fact, one of the things with the Omnipod 5 is we have some of the lowest times in, which is really important to a user. I think the other really important thing about an insulin pump is the quality of life improvements that it really affords. And that is one of the things that makes Omnipod 5 so special, and why people just say, I absolutely love it. We hear things like, I am sleeping better. Parents and carers sleeping through the night. That's a really big thing. So many parents of young children will say it's like never getting out of the newborn phase, because you're always worried and up and checking. And so we actually, have collected some data where parents said, unequivocally, I sleep better now because of this technology. And there's plenty other quality of life improvements. So when you pair the glycemic improvements with the quality of life, it really is game changing to the user and for those little kids to the parents as well.
That's something that I really care about as well. It's not just about the numbers. Obviously, the Strip Pod is about conversations beyond the numbers. It is about all of that lifestyle stuff, the stuff that's kind of harder to track, the kind of stuff that we don't have as much data on, but the stuff that is arguably just as, if not more important.
Absolutely.
Because if you get a full night's sleep and you have a full tank of energy in the morning, I'm probably going to, be more focused on, okay, what does my diabetes need from me today? Emotionally, I have more to be able to give. It's amazing what a full night of sleep can do. What do you think? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious why someone would move to Omnipod. The no tubes, not being afraid of a door handle ever again. What do you think are some of the biggest barriers for people transitioning to Omnipod, particularly if someone who was hesitant, who was listening to this podcast, kind of what would you say to them?
Yeah. I think we see this with folks who have been using injections for a very long time, like 30 years, 20 years. Many people have a view of, what, if it's not broke, I'm not going to fix it, right? And I understand that, but I do think that, one of the pieces of feedback that we consistently hear from people who are new to the Omnipod is, I just wish I did this earlier. We hear that over and over and over, and they'd say, look, injections aren't great, but it wasn't so bad. But then moving to the Omnipod has absolutely changed my life in so many ways. Like, just to give you a really simple thing, like there was a gentleman who I remember speaking to who said, I never ate my lunch at work because I never wanted to get out injections and go through the palaver of people going, oh, what are you doing? Oh, you've got, what's that? So he never ate at work. And he said, to now be able to just pick up a PDM, couple of buttons, and enjoy lunch with my colleagues has absolutely changed my life. To someone without diabetes, that might sound so trivial, so small, but to him, it absolutely
means the world.
meant the world. Sorry, what was your original question?
It was actually about what do you find are the biggest barriers?
The
But
biggest
You
barriers.
have answered it. It's
Well,
a change in behaviour.
It change in behaviour. There's actually one that I think is bigger and actually more important and topical at the moment, and that is around universal access. So one of the most wonderful things that happened to the diabetes community was CGM access for all, and that was incredible. But CGM alone is not enough because automated insulin delivery is a standard of care and we see it all over the world. And yet it's not financially viable for everyone in Australia. And that is the biggest barrier right now because we are certainly constantly hearing from patients who say, you know what, I tried it, I love it, but I just can't afford it in the long term. Why isn't this available like CGM is? Well, it should be. It absolutely should be. And the community very much feel like that. And, insulin pumps are not necessarily for everyone. It is a choice, as we were talking about earlier, but it's a choice that someone should make based on their needs as opposed to their financial ability to pay. And right now in Australia, that's not the case because so many people can't even consider it just purely because of the economics. And so that is the biggest barrier, as well as what I mentioned earlier.
No, I agree. I think even across the ditch in New Zealand, we're seeing, subsidized AID care. Why haven't we got it here yet? And I do agree with you. I think it would change the lives of so many, particularly families, who've got plenty of mouths to feed, young people who are just moving out of home for the first time. It would change a lot of people's lives. And we often chat to the clinicians at Australian Diabetes Technology up in Brisbane and South East Queensland, and they say the same thing that you said. It's a change in behaviour that's really tough, but once you've changed to a new kind of tech or a new kind of management, they've never heard of someone wishing that they hadn't changed or hadn't adopted technology, particularly now. And I want to say this year, this has been the biggest update of tech that I think Australia has ever seen in the diabetes market. There's so much. And I completely understand the emotional and the mental needs to be able to learn how to do something different, changing your muscle memory, explaining how the gentleman at lunch uses his Omnipod made me realize you're also the most discreet insulin pump on the market. You don't need to pull something that's attached to you out of your pocket, some weird looking alien device that most people will call an iPod Touch for some reason. You can be bolusing and checking your levels on a device that looks like a phone.
And that's really, really important to certain groups of consumers. For example, especially those in the teenage years, what we often hear from parents is, my child did so well, on a tube pump when they were 6 and 7 and 8, and they had full control over that child. And then they entered these really difficult years, adolescence, and all of a sudden, they'd rip it off and say, I don't want that anymore, and then, why? What happened? What changed? It's like, well, it's really important that I'm discreet. I don't want to be different. I don't want to be singled out amongst my friends. And so we see that there's a lot of teenagers who really love the Omnipod purely because it's discreet.
Yeah, you just don't want to be different at that age.
You don't want to be different. You don't want to point out your diabetes technology and start talking about your chronic disease. I mean, some people do, and that's great.
Yeah.
But people, again, should have the choice.
I'm also super interested in, the business behind running a diabetes company. I find this fascinating, particularly getting a medical device launched in Australia, which is arguably one of the strictest
Regulatory environments.
Exactly. Which is great when you're a patient. We want to make sure that everything we're using is safe. But gee, that must be tough for a medical device company. What's one thing that people don't realize about running a diabetes tech company?
It's a great question. I think there's a couple of things, right? It's a very resource-intensive business in that we spend an enormous amount of resources, especially in R&D. Our whole mantra is to simplify diabetes, and we make a pod that looks so simple. We have teams who work so hard and continuously are improving that user experience to make it simple, to remove steps, to remove things that add burden. And I think people would be really surprised if they saw the investment that we make into that whole human factors and whole D process to deliver what we do deliver, right? And a seamless, consistent experience for the consumer, right? I mean, I should know how many millions of pods we manufacture. It's a lot, to meet a certain quality threshold. Quality is in every single thing that we do. Yeah, it's a very resource-intensive business.
Yeah, I can imagine. I don't even want to see your financial spreadsheets. I have to do my own financial forecasting and reporting, and that's enough of a headache for me. I can imagine the planning involved in bringing out a new product, let alone getting it approved. The trials. Yeah. And something else that I love about Omnipod is you're one of the only diabetes companies that encourage recycling of your devices. You have your Omnipod return kit program, because a lot of, particularly with our customers, the kind of younger people are really conscious about sustainability, which is really hard when you're living with a chronic condition, because anything medical, I feel like the words sustainability and medical just do not go together.
Yes.
Maybe one day, but you do have an Omnipod return program, which is really cool.
We do. And, say that sustainability is actually really, really important to Insulet as an organisation. All our manufacturing sites, solar panels, and, as you mentioned, we have this return program where various components, are put back into, I'm not sure what the right word is. Certain components are, recycled, I guess. Sustainability is important. It is important to the consumer, and, we certainly want to do our bit to be sustainable.
I've just got a couple more questions for you. Something I'm really interested in hearing is, what have you learned from speaking to people with diabetes about their needs and experiences? Have you learned anything from these amazing people that you support?
So much. And I still continue to learn, right? I think if you look at any business, you think people ask very simplistically, what is the problem you are solving? I think in diabetes, there's actually multiple problems that we are solving, right? It's the burden. It's the burden physically. It's the burden mentally. There's a lot of considerations for the user and the consumer, and I think we do that in a great way, but we also look forward to continued innovation that will continue to take more of the burden away.
And speaking of continuing to create awesome technology, I know that you just launched the Omnipod 5. And don't get me wrong, we're really excited about that. But what's next? What does the future of diabetes technology look like for you?
Yeah. I certainly don't have any insight into future products, but what I would say is the data that I was talking about earlier that we collect gives us great insight. And, it's possible that we'll see iterations of the technology in form factor, different set targets and things. Yeah, I mean, no, we don't have any insight into, what the technology beyond the Omnipod 5 looks like, but, innovation is absolutely what drives us. And I'm looking forward to finding out what new things we've got coming out.
And I mean, if the last 5 years anything to go by, I feel like the next 5 years, like with AI becoming so big, like I just feel like we're going to see leaps and bounds in the next 5 years of technology. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. I think it will very much play an integral role in this technology and others as well. Yeah.
Finally, Jo, we usually end every episode asking our guest what advice they would give to someone who's been newly diagnosed with diabetes. And since you would see hundreds, if not thousands, of people at varying stages of their diabetes journey using your devices, what would you say to someone who's at the start of their diabetes journey?
Oh, yeah, it's a great question. The people that I've come into contact with who are brave enough to talk about their diagnosis, it's always a very triggering conversation for them, and it can be really traumatic to relive it. And so just as an observer, because I'm not a person who lives with diabetes, so I certainly don't feel, that I've got good insight, but I just say be kind to yourself. There's a lot to take in. People talk about how confusing and all-encompassing that is. And just from observing, I'd say you're going to have a lot of information thrown at you, complications and insulin delivery and this, that, and the other. And technology, it really is a lot to absorb. You don't need to absorb it all in one day. Yeah, and just be conscious of the emotional side of a diagnosis. It really impacts an entire family. That's another thing that I've learned. It's certainly not just, one child. There's siblings, there's parents, there's grandparents. Yeah, and I just think people who do go through that are some of the most remarkable people I've ever met. They have such strength, such determination to just get on with life and to deal with whatever comes their way. And I think this is one of the reasons that I've stayed in this space for, coming into 2 decades, and I've got no plans to go anywhere else because I'm inspired each day.
They really are some of the most resilient people you'll ever meet. And I love the advice about being kind to yourself, because your whole entire life changes in one day. I think you can go slow and just kind of tiptoe and take baby steps to figure out what all this means, because it is so complicated. Finally, people have heard this podcast. They love Omnipod 5. They want to hear more. They want to sign up. What do they do? How can they get started with Omnipod 5?
Yeah. So I guess, head to the website, Omnipod, click on the Australian flag. It's all there. And that's to find out a little bit more about the Omnipod. You can give us a call as well. But in terms of the process, if this is something that you really want, the first sort of point of call is to speak to your healthcare professional, diabetes educator, endocrinologist. Find out if this is the right therapy for you, and your healthcare professional will support you through the ordering process, forms, etc. So, yeah.
All that fun stuff that we leave up to our wonderful healthcare professionals. Well, Jo, thank you so much for coming on today. It was such a pleasure having you, and we're so excited about Omnipod 5, and we can't wait to see what's coming next.
Thank you so much, Ash. I really enjoyed myself. Thank you.
Strip Supply acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging.